Do you know someone who survived breast cancer? Do you not have measles right now? Do you know someone who, even if they won't admit it, has taken Viagra to enhance their relationships? Or do you simply enjoy a good cold beer? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you, or someone you know, has benefited from science. Often the results of science are tangible, things like cancer treatments, or the yeast we use to brew beer. Other times, though, the benefits of science aren't as obvious. This is fundamental science. Researchers following their curiosity just to see where it goes. And while the benefits aren't always obvious, fundamental research is science at its most powerful, and often its most impactful. I'd like to share one of my favorite stories, the story of green fluorescent protein, GFP. In the 1960s, Osamu Shimomura was studying the crystal jellyfish. It's this beautiful translucent jellyfish found here in the Pacific Northwest. Shimomura noticed that when he shone a light on the jellyfish, it glowed green, and he wanted to know why. I don't quite know how the story goes, but I've imagined it something like this. A couple of scientists were hanging out at the Friday Harbor Labs in the San Juan Islands. It was late at night, they'd had a few drinks, and one turned to another and said, "Hey, let's take this light and shine it off the dock and see what happens." Now, I don't quite know if that's how it went down, but having been a scientist at Friday Harbor with a drink and a light, it's at least conceivable. Regardless of the origin story, the invention or discovery of GFP, green fluorescent protein, has revolutionized biomedical science. Cancer researchers use GFP to watch cancer cells divide and move in real time. Neuroscientists use GFP to study the impacts of new Alzheimer's drugs. In my lab at Washington State University, Vancouver, we use GFP to study hearing loss. We look at tiny baby zebrafish, the size of an eyelash, that have hearing cells on the outside of their bodies, just like the hearing cells in our ear. These fish have green fluorescent protein in those hearing cells, so we can expose them to loud noise, the fish equivalent of a rock concert, and then put them under the microscope and watch how those cells respond. We can then test drugs in our quest to find a way to prevent hearing loss, eventually in us. All of this research boils down to GFP, and one scientist simply following his curiosity about a jellyfish. Science has stories, and all of us, from breast cancer survivors to those who just like a local craft beer, have a story that involves science. But science without communication is silent. As a scientist and a communicator, part of my job is to help us share those science stories. Together with my colleagues, I founded Science Talk, a science communication organization that empowers scientists and science communicators to share science stories and impact the world. Science without communication is silent. Let's make some noise.